How's everybody doing today? Good. It always gets me. About 2 years ago, I started doing this, where I will, about once a month, I'll wear a tie. Now, I don't in July, because I'm not here in July, and August is too hot, but the other 10 months of the year, I'll wear a tie about once a month, and every time I wear a tie, people act like a unicorn just flew across the sky with a rainbow trailing behind it. It's like it happens every month. About every 30 days, I'm going to wear a tie just because I want to. I don't button it up, and I still wear jeans, and I got my Converse on, and it's okay. World's not coming to an end. Nothing's changing. I just like this look once in a while, all right? So just sharing that with you. So in October, when I come in and I'm wearing a tie, maybe with a vest, maybe not, you can calm down. We've been here before. We'll make it, okay? So I think it's just everybody's looking for reasons, and I think, well, does anybody here ever have any problem with stress? You ever heard of that? You've heard the word, right? You know the word stress. You may have seen it. You got friends who sometimes have trouble with stress. Anyway, just to let you know, next week, starting on next Sunday, we'll be starting a series on dealing with stress. It's called, what's it called? What's keeping you up at night? And we'll be going through stress, understanding what the Bible teaches about it, how to minimize it, how to deal with it in your life, how to actually sometimes use it for your advantage. And so that's starting next week. Just wanted to let you know about that in case you know somebody who ever deals with stress, so you can tell them about it. Not for you, but for anybody you know, kind of thing. Today we're finishing up our series called Pursuit. And Pursuit is about success. It's about pursuing success and doing it in a way that is healthy and happy and basically in line with what biblical success would be. And we introduced one principle very, very early, right at the very beginning of the series, was the ladder of success. And the ladder of success is that you've got two hands that are necessary to climb the ladder of success. And one is the hand of success and deeds, doing things, accomplishments, that kind of thing, tasks. And then you've got the character hand. And if your character isn't growing as the accomplishments grow, you will fall off the ladder because you're only holding with one hand. Okay, and so we've been looking, and we've looked specifically at the life of a guy named David, and we've been following him through the process. Now, one of the things that a lot of people think when they think about success is success means stringing together a series of times when nothing goes wrong and I just keep moving up. Have you ever had a period of your life that actually went that way? Or does life, isn't it always a series of success and a failure and a success and a failure and two successes and a failure? That's how it works. And the reality is that how you handle failure is one of the key drivers as to whether or not you will succeed overall in your life, is how you handle the failures. The thing is, though, failure comes in different flavors. There's trip and fall down, oops, failure. Easy to get up, keep moving. There's big failure. And then there's catastrophic failure. And catastrophic failure in your life usually, almost always, isn't just your fault. It's a case where a whole bunch of stuff goes wrong at the same time. It's not just you made a bad decision, you did something wrong, but you did something wrong at the same time somebody else did something while the timing was absolutely atrocious. And those three forces come together and boom, catastrophic failure. You ever had in your life where you made a really, really, really bad decision and it just went on by and nothing really went wrong? Because somehow the circumstances were good and there was nobody watching and you survived and you made a huge mistake and it didn't even make that much of a ripple in your life. It turned into a huge mistake but a small failure. And have you ever had a time or known somebody who made a relatively small mistake at the wrong time with the wrong people involved and mushroom cloud over their life? Right? Well, today we're going to be looking at David underneath a mushroom cloud, okay? And we're going to see how you recover when you're at rock bottom. When the mushroom cloud is over your life, what do you do then? Okay, it's a very important lesson because all of us are going to have those times when the mushroom cloud has hit. And if you want to go ahead and turn in your Bible or turn on your Bible to 1 Samuel chapter 30, that's where we're going to be. But we're going to work our way back to it. I want to give you the whole series. We've taken, David was the second king of Israel, probably the most successful king the nation of Israel ever had. And we've taken just a slice out of his life, and we've spent this entire 5 weeks just looking at this one little section of David's life. And let me give you a recap to get us up to where we're going to be here in chapter 30. Now, Israel had a king named Saul. Saul had enormous talent, enormous potential, and Saul was a miserable, complete, and total abject failure as a king because he never got the two hands working in success. He had successful actions and deeds, but he never got his character to catch up with him. And he was a wipeout. So God went after a new king. He said he's going to get a king after his own heart. And so he goes to a farm, and he finds a shepherd boy who's not even the oldest kid in his family, not the obvious one, but he picks him out and says, you're going to be the next king. You're going to be the one who's after my heart, who does the things I want done, who has character to match your actions. Well, not much long after that, David gets his first victory. And you may have heard of David's first win. There was this dude named Goliath. You may have heard of that one. And if you want to get real popular real fast, kill a giant with a slingshot. You will work your way up the popularity ladder in a hurry. And David takes out the giant, and the next thing you know, he is hero number one. And as it turns out, because God's blessings are on him, and he's got some enormous gifts and abilities, pretty soon David is the most successful general in the Israeli army in his early 20s. He's number one. He's leading the biggest charges. He's winning the biggest battles. He's doing amazing things. He's on the cover of every magazine, and they are literally writing songs about him. The number one song in Israel at that time was about King David. I'm not making that up. It's in the Bible. The magazine part I made up. Next thing you know, the king is noticing David's power and allows David to marry his daughter, which means he's married to a princess, living in the palace, walking down the street, hearing the song people are singing about him, and winning everything he touches. And God looks at him and says, uh-oh, we've got a problem. Because we're climbing the deeds ladder of success, and we're not using the hand of character. And God says, we have to work on that one for a while. We've worked out the whole thing about you being a success in your actions and your deeds. Let's make you a success in character. And the problem is the way that God makes us successful in our character, I don't know if you know this or not, it's not good news. The way God makes you successful in your character is by bringing bad things into your life. Because good things don't test your character and they don't develop your character. They hardly even reveal your character. But bad things test your character and develop your character and build your character. So David goes from living in the palace, the most popular rock star general in Israel, to one night, his wife has to literally lower him out the window of his house, of the palace, minutes before the goons arrive from the king to kill him. And he spends the next few years on the run. He's out in the wilderness. He's such a charismatic leader that pretty soon he's got this band of 400 and later 600 men who follow him. But of course, the king of Israel can summon 3,000 just special forces ops to take with him. And Saul gets his 3,000 special forces ops, and he goes after David and his 600 men. How do you think that's going to go? At one point, David's on one side of a hill, Saul's on the other side, 600 versus 3,000. And the news comes in. The Philistines are attacking, so Saul has to leave and go back. But as soon as he's done with the Philistines, the number one enemy Israel's facing militarily at the time, he comes right back with his 3,000 special ops guys. And you know, we told these two stories, how David and his men are hiding in the back of a cave. And Saul needs to take care of some business. Two things, primarily number two. He had to go to the bathroom. And Saul goes into the cave, and David has the opportunity to kill him and chooses not to, because Saul is the anointed king of Israel. God's hand is still on him. He won't touch him. David wins. He makes the right decision under stress. He moves forward. A little bit later, Saul and his men in a big field. David and one of his commanders go out into the field and find that Saul's men are sound asleep because God put him to sleep. And he's walking over and he's standing, and Saul is sleeping in front of him with his own spear, Saul's spear, right by his head. And David's friend says, you know what? One shot. It won't take me two. I'll take the spear. I'll drive it through him. We're done with all this hiding. David says, no, we're not supposed to touch the anointed of God. I can't do that. David, another win. And then comes the loss. The failure. Because David's been hiding in the wilderness with 600 guys for a while. And he says, eventually, Saul's going to catch me. Now, God has been protecting him amazing ways for years, but David loses his faith. He leaves the nation of Israel, and he moves to the Philistine country, their number one enemies. And he gets on good with one of the generals there, one of the governors there kind of thing, and spends the next year and a half living in deceit. He's taking out entire villages, killing innocent people, and lying bold-faced about what he's doing to the king. He's been at it for a year and a half, and God says, okay, we need to fix this. And last week we thought we hit rock bottom because David gets summoned by the Philistine king to go to war against his own nation of Israel. David doesn't know what to do, so he follows. And his 600 men are there, and the Philistine army's like, the one guy's he's bought what David's selling. The other generals are like, no. They write songs about this guy. He is not going to war behind me. And so David, who at one point was the number one general in Israel, has just been rejected by the other army. He doesn't even have a team now, and he's sent home to his little garbage town called Ziklag, and he has the future prospects not of being the king of God's nation, Israel, but being, for the rest of his life, the mayor of Ziklag with his 600 malcontents and their families. And you think that's the bottom, and you're wrong. And you come to 1 Samuel chapter 30. 3 days later, when David and his men arrived home at their town of Ziklag, they found that the Amalekites, who's another nation in that area, had made a raid into the Negev and Ziklag. They had crushed Ziklag and burned it to the ground. They're coming up on Ziklag, David and his men, discouraged, and they see smoke coming from their town. And when they get there, the whole place has been burned. They had carried off all the women and children and everyone else without killing anyone. So they get there, all their stuff's gone, all their spouses are gone, all their kids are gone. Nothing left. When David and his men saw the ruins and realized what had happened to their families, they wept until they could weep no more. David's two wives, Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel, were among those captured. David was now in great danger because all of his men were very bitter about losing their sons and daughters, and they began to talk of stoning him. So he lost his 600 men. Let me make something clear. They come back. They've given up their entire lives to follow David as David the refugee from the law. David the one hiding from the king. They've given their entire lives to do this, and they come back to find that their wives and their kids and their homes are gone. And what they are doing is saying, there are rocks. Who calls that? David calls it. Let's take him out. And remember, these are 600 men who abandoned everything to follow David. They're not the best characters in the world. They're the kind of people who will pick up rocks and who will stone you. And now we have David. Remember just a few years ago when he was living in the palace? When they were singing songs about him? When he was married to the princess? When he was the next king of Israel and everybody knew it? Now David is standing in the burnt rubble of his own home. His wife and his children are gone. His 600 friends have forsaken him and are ready to stone him to death. And David has nothing, and David has reached the bottom. And what you do when you reach the bottom is the driver as to whether or not you will find success. And what does David do next? What he does next is the most important sentence in the Bible about David. Because what it says is, but David found strength in the Lord his God. David got low enough that he only had one way to look, and he looked up. Which is different than what he'd been doing before. Which is totally different. Matter of fact, the next verse, after David looks up to God, says he called to Abiathar the priest and said, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought him the ephod. And you're like going, what the heck's an ephod and what's an Abiathar? Abiathar is the priest. The ephod is a vest-like thing that the priest would wear. And in the front part of the ephod was a container. And in the container was something called the umathermon. No. Nuts. It's the Ummim and the Thummim. I'm not making that part up. And it was a way somehow that God communicated to the priest to give him God's directions. It could have been dice, it could have been rolling sticks. They don't know what it was, but it was a way for God to communicate to the priest what his will was. And David goes to God and says, through the priest says, what should I do? Now that's freaky because David hasn't talked to or about God in years. From the moment he left Israel, there is no mention of God. There is no mention of prayer. You're going, there's a priest with him? I haven't heard about this priest in chapters. Where'd this priest come from? Because David's been ignoring him. But the thing that David did when he got to the bottom, and the thing we have to do, the first thing we have to do when we hit bottom, or maybe before we hit bottom so we don't have to go all the way to the bottom, is to remember your source. God let David reach bottom so he would look up. And by the way, God will let you get as low as he needs to get you to look up too. You go, that's just terrible. Why in the world would he do that? Why would God let all this bad stuff come into my life if I'm not looking to him? Isn't that just mean? Well, let's just think for a second. We were talking with my in-laws last night about a couple of the grandkids, and one of them, when they had another baby was born, and the kid had to change schools. A little trauma in the kid's life. And, sometimes kids will handle that transition well, and sometimes they don't. And this was a little kid, and he did not handle it well. It was a case of constant tantrums, have to dress him 6 times every morning, crying all the way to school, crying all the way home. It was just a disaster. This kid did not process this particular transition well at all. And you know what the parents did? After they'd been at it for a couple of days and they realized he's not going to take the transition very well, what they did was they put him up for adoption. I'm kidding. They didn't. That's not what parents do, is it? Now, when you have a kid and your kid is going through a really bad time and he's not obeying or she's not obeying or she's not listening, what do? You double down on your intention of getting their attention, right? You do whatever it takes to get their attention, to change the behavior, to get the behavior where it needs to be, to get their attitude where it needs to be, right? Isn't that exactly what you do with a kid? You ever have a kid go through a rough time? Don't say it so loudly. Especially if the kid's standing next to you. That's just not cool at all. No. Yeah, you double down. You say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get my child's attention. Why? Because I love my child. And when we start moving away from God, God doesn't go, well, that one's not doing very well. Let's put that one up for adoption. God, who is referred to throughout the Bible as God the Father, goes into parent mode, and he takes away our cell phone, and He grounds us, and He makes us stay in our room all day, and we can't get on the internet, and we don't have any allowance anymore, and He does whatever it takes to get us to the place. He lets whatever He needs to let into our life, get into our life, with Him still controlling and loving us, to get us to look up, to get us to look back to our source. Do I need to say this? If you're going through a really, really, really rough time right now and you think you've hit bottom, two things. Look up now, or you may find a new bottom. I mean, David thought he hit rock bottom the day before. He thought he hit rock bottom 3 days ago when he has to leave the army and he's kicked out and he's not allowed to fight with anybody. He can't do anything, right? He thought he'd already hit rock bottom. Oh, no, my friend. He thought he'd hit rock bottom when he looks and sees his house is burned down. Oh, no, not quite yet. He thought he hit rock bottom when he knows his wife and kids and stuff's gone. Not quite. When his 600 men started tossing rocks in the air and looking at David, that's rock bottom. And he looked up. And that's what God wants from us. He lets these things into our lives because He knows the best thing, the thing we have to do, is look up. Now, we tend not to. We come up with excuses. We come up with new strategies, new plans, new ways of doing this. I'll do this and this and this. This will get me out of this mess. And what we realize is we're in a ditch, and all we're doing is using a shovel. And you don't use shovels to get out of ditches. You're just making deeper holes. It's like, okay, how about now? Because I love you too much to leave you in there. And so David asks God. He comes back and remembers his source. And go back, keep going, verse 8. Then David asked the Lord, should I chase after this band of raiders? Will I catch them? And the Lord told him, yes, go after them. You will surely recover everything that was taken from you. So David and his 600 men set out, and they came to the brook of Besor. I'm going to read verse 10. But 200 of the men were too exhausted to cross the brook. They've been marching for days. So David continued the pursuit with 400 men. What happened next? This is really important, because he remembered his source, and then he re-engaged. Or the theological term, he got off his butt. Well, kids are all going, he said butt. Yeah, I said butt. You're not allowed to if your mom says no, but I've got a tie on. Now we come, by the way, to the part where Christians mess up the success ladder more than anywhere else I see it. Remember, Saul messed up the success ladder because it was accomplishment, deeds, without character. I see an awful lot of Christians who think their job is character, Bible study, prayer, class, seminar, rally, without any actions. And they're on a hamster wheel. And they're wondering why they're frustrated. And I'm going to tell you this straight out, because as a pastor, we hear it all the time. He comes up to you and says, Pastor, we just need more meat. And I think what that means is use more Greek in your teaching. I'm not sure. Actually, I know what it means. I just don't, it does not mean what they think it means. Because here's what Jesus said about meat. Jesus said, my meat, King James translation, my meat, my food, is to do the will of the one who sent me. See, if you're sitting here and you're just learning, getting information, Bible study, and you're never doing anything at all, you're stuck on the hamster wheel, you're stuck on the treadmill, and it's a treadmill of failure and frustration, and you're just going to wander around going, I don't know, I just need one more Bible study. I just need one more class. I just need a preacher that uses these phrases. I just need somebody to teach me this truth. You don't need more truth, you need more action. Because you're stuck on a hamster wheel of just learning, and you need to get your butt off the hamster wheel and start doing along with the learning. right? Deeds, character, deeds, character, deeds, character. That always bugs me because I know people who've been frustrated for years and they go around just burr, 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 and it just doesn't work. And if you're stuck in that thing going, man, what are you doing? James said it this way. You see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It's dead and useless. Which means without actions, we can get stuck on the treadmill of increased spiritual knowledge, but not spiritual growth. And if you're starting to feel frustrated because you don't think you're growing enough, ask yourself the question first, what am I doing? And then ask, am I spending time with God? Which these are necessary pieces. Spending time with God, praying, being in a Bible study, those are necessary pieces. But I know too many Christians who are so caught up in that one. They're like a person, a guy who decides to start going to the gym and working out, and only works out his right arm. And he's got this huge shoulder here and this huge bicep here, and the trap on that side is just insane. On this side, he's Pee Wee Herman. And I know Christians both ways. I know some Christians who are so busy doing that they never do any growing. They never do any learning. They don't pray. They don't spend time with God. They're not in a group with other Christians growing. They're not doing any of the stuff that is to grow their character. And I know a whole bunch who are so busy trying to get more character that they're not doing anything. And they're like Popeye and Pee Wee Herman split in half, put on a body. Those references too old for people? Yeah. So Rhonda Rousey's this side. I don't know who's the other side. Okay. By the way, this is not meant as a commercial. I get passionate about that no matter what. But in the announcements we're going to mention, we're going to have 2 fairs coming up, one in next week and one 2 weeks after that, on serving. One is what was going on in the church that doesn't happen on Sunday, so that you can say, okay, here's where I need to get involved and start doing something to help the community, to help with all the different things we do with youth and all that stuff. And then the next 2 weeks later, we'll do one for Sunday morning. How can you get involved in Sunday morning? How you start doing something to help advance God's kingdom. Because I don't know if you noticed, the world's kind of messed up. The world is kind of like a toddler wearing a 2-day-old diaper. It stinks and it needs changed. And the agents of change that God has put on earth is the church and Christians. That's why we're here. Which leads us to the next thing. I'm not going to read it to you. Let me just tell you what happens next. David God says go after him. They go after him. They have to leave 200 men behind because they're too tired. They head south. They find the Amalekites. I think it's south. They find the Amalekites. The Amalekites have been raiding a number of places, so they got lots of stuff. They got lots of food, and they got lots of beverages. Let's see. If you've just had a major victory, and you've got lots of food, and you've got lots of beverages, what are you doing? You are having a party. And they are spread out over a valley, partying, and David shows up with 400 very unhappy men. And David and his men get to take out their frustrations on them. And you're not going to believe this part. They find out that every one of their wives has been untouched in the process. They find out that every one of their children is just fine. And they find out that when the Amalekites decided to throw a party, they used stuff they got from other villages, not from their village. So every bit of their stuff is still okay. Now, along the way to get there, they come across this slave. He's an Egyptian, and they come across a slave. And some of the guys are like, let's kill him. They're kind of mad. David says, no, let's treat him humanely. Now, this is weird because up to this point, David's been killing entire villages. He says, let's treat him with mercy and respect and love. And he does. That guy helps them find the Amalekites to get all the stuff back. They're coming back with all their stuff, plus all the other stuff the people of the Amalekites. Don't name your kid Amalekite. That's just really hard. all the stuff the Amalekites have stolen, and they're coming back with all that stuff. And they get back to the 200 guys who couldn't make the trip. They were too excited, too exhausted. And there's a little bit of controversy. Because you think about it, David's been a land pirate for the past year and a half. And what you get, you keep. And the men who've been following him say, hey, they didn't go with us to raid and take the Amalekites' stuff. They don't get anything. They get their own kids, they get their spouse back, they get their stuff that's got their name on it, and that's all. They don't get anything else. And David goes, no. Why don't we try doing things differently now? Let's not live like pirates. Let's live like people who believe in mercy and justice, and let's give them an equal share. Wow. Who is this guy, and what's he done with David? Because he's showing mercy and justice and love to people. What's going on? Well, David has now started doing the right thing, and he's returned to right living, and that's step 3. You remember your source, you re-engage, and you return to right living. And what do I mean by right living? And we've got to make sure we get this right, because I know a lot of Christians get this one wrong. Right living to a lot of Christians means what? Means following a whole bunch of rules. And returning to right living means I go back to doing the things I'm supposed to do and not doing the things I'm not supposed to do. But the reality is returning to right living means being the person you're supposed to be more than doing the things you're supposed to do. Micah 6:8 has it this way. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And suddenly David is living right, and suddenly things are going right because God's blessing him. Now, here's the question you ask. Because my tendency, when I start to get down a little bit, is to lean into me. What do I do well? Let's do it harder. David was a planner and a conniver, and up to this point, every time he planned and connived. And now we're saying, don't plan and connive as much. Reconnect with God, keep your connection with God right, re-engage in doing God's stuff instead of your stuff. Start living right again. The question becomes, how does it work out? Well, funny you should ask. Because there's something weird happening here that you can't see, because the Bible's in chapters, and it tells one story, and then it goes back to the other. And there's 2 different stories going on at the same time. And if you're not careful, you'll miss the connection between the 2. So let's go back a few days. Because a few days ago, where was David? David was with the Philistine army getting ready to march north to take on the Israeli army. The Israelites are here. The Philistines are here. The Philistines have gathered for battle. The Israelites know they're coming, so they're gathering for battle. And David gets sent home, right? Bible says it takes him about 3 days to get there. David goes home. Philistines are here. Israelites are here. Want to do some calendar math? Philistines are here. They're getting organized. How long would you think it would take if you've got armies that are coming together who've worked together before? How long would you take for them to sign and get organized to move? About a day? Say you take it. Okay, you guys from Gath, you guys are over here. You guys from this place are over here. Let's get them all. It's going to take a day to get organized. You're just going to get organized, and then day 2, you're going to do what? Well, we've got to march. We've got to get where we're going. Right? We're not going to wait for the Israelites to come to us. We're going to where they are while they're coming to meet us. So it's going to take you, so you're going to get the next day and you're going to do what? You're going to travel, right? And it's going to take, to get to where Jezreel was, I don't know, about a day, you think? Probably a day, because you're taking a lot. A lot of you guys have more familiarity moving large numbers of people, but you don't just like that, It takes a while, and it's a reasonable distance. So let's say it's going to take about a day to get there. So they had a day for organizing. They had a day to travel. And once you get there, are you going to just attack? Are you going to put up tents, make your embankments, get your system laid out, get everything situated? Are you going to spend some time doing that? I think you're going to spend, I don't know, about a day. getting all your stuff together. Because you've traveled, you spent one day getting organized there, a day traveling, you're tired, so you spend the day getting organized. And then the next day, if the Israelites are there, which they are by this time, you're going to have a battle. Make sense? That's what I thought. Now, you know what happens in the battle? What happens in the battle is kind of fascinating. It's in chapter 31. And what happens in the battle is the Israelites and the Philistines go at it. In the battle, Saul is killed. Saul's the one who's been blocking David from becoming king, because he's king now, and David can't be king while he's king, so Saul's blocking him. Saul gets killed in the battle. Also, Saul's number 1, 2, and 3 sons, the ones who are next in line to be king, they also get killed in the battle. So by the time the battle's over, all the major impediments as far as legally for David to become king are gone. By the time the battle's over, David's free to be king, basically. Now, about that math we did. Took a day to get organized, a day to travel, a day to set up their defenses, battle. 3 days. Did you notice this? Back at the very beginning of chapter 30, the one we're just reading. Verse 1, first 3 words. 3 days later, when David and his men arrived at the town of Ziklag, David walks into Ziklag and it's burned to the ground. David's wives are gone. His children have been kidnapped. His house is burned. He's standing in the rubble, and the 600 men who've been following him are getting ready to stone him to death. And David finds strength in the Lord his God at the same time Saul is dying in battle, and his sons are being killed in battle, so David is now free to be king. David knows none of this. He's just finding his strength in God. And God's already got everything taken care of. Anybody here at rock bottom? Anybody here at a spot where there's nowhere to go but up? Anybody here going, I don't know why I should get up again. I don't know why I should do it. Why do I keep this up? Why don't I just quit? Why do I keep trying? Why does this happen? All this stuff always happens to me. There's no reason. I should just give up and quit. And David, at the moment he could have given up and quit, God was solving the problem. David didn't know that. We can never know when God's busy solving our problems. But if you're at rock bottom right now, if you're standing in the ashes of your former life, if you're standing in the ashes of a situation you thought you could fix and it just didn't happen, you're standing in the ashes of a disaster that some of it was your making and some of it was just bad timing and some of it was other people, and it all came together in this huge catastrophe, and you are standing there going, there is no hope at all. Look up. God could very well be sowing the seeds of your success right now. The victory could have already been taken care of by the Lord while you're trying to decide what to do. So look up. And today, if that's where you are, don't quit. Look up. It could be that you don't have a relationship with God, with Christ. You've never accepted what Jesus Christ did on the cross to pay for your sins and restore you to a relationship with Him. If that's the case and things have been going wrong, can I tell you why they're happening? It's because God loves you too much to let you screw it up that bad. And He is calling you today, look up. And if you're ready to have that relationship with Christ, we do it very simply here. We say during the next song or at the end of the service, if you'll grab one of these blue bags, we have some on this corner, we have some on that corner, some there, and some there. If you grab a blue bag, we've got people that are trained in this. They'll take about 10 minutes. They'll help you unpack the contents of the bag, show you how to have a relationship with Christ, and how to start living for Him. Everything won't suddenly get totally perfect in your life, but now you're on the path of success. God's kind of success. Could be that you need to be baptized to announce that you're a follower of Christ. If you've never told everybody that by being baptized, we'd love to have you do that. You can baptism at spousesprings.org, or just catch one of us after service. Catch somebody in a lanyard and say, how do I do that? And they'll point you in the right direction, or figure out how to point you in the right direction. Could be that you want to take communion and remind yourself of what God did for you. And we have communion stations in the front, and back. Could be you want to just pray about it. God's just laid something on your heart, and you're going through one of those times, you're at the bottom, and you want to find strength in Him, and you'd like to pray. We've got a cross over here. You can go pray there. There'll be some people probably hanging around over there too, that if you want somebody to pray with you, they'll be there as well to pray with you about something if you like. You don't have to. You can do it by yourself. I wonder why you're here. I think it's possible there's people here because God wants to remind you of what your source is, and so you can remember your source today. Some of you are here because you need to re-engage and start doing things because you've gotten a little heavy in one hand in climbing God's success ladder. Could be you want you to return to right living. I don't know. But I know that in this room there are lots of people who have failed, lots of people who currently are going through failure, and probably some people who think they are failures. You can fail a lot, but you're never a failure until you quit. Because failure isn't the end of your path to success. It's a step toward it.